So this is my desk. My wife actually made this beautiful desk when I was on tour, and I needed a new studio desk because my last one was super ugly and didn't match our house. We just remodeled, so she is pretty handy with woodworking, thanks to her dad. So she built me this awesome desk. So my main interface for conversion is a Symphony Mark II, and main monitoring are these Auxes Studio 100s, and then I use the NS10Ms as like a B reference, but I'm mainly using the Auxes for mixing and tracking and anything I need in that regard. I have MacBook Pro and a Polk sub that's active for my low end. And yeah, that's pretty much it. This is an M-Audio Auxes 49 for any keys or programming stuff I need to do, which isn't a ton since I play guitar. So this is my wife's granddad's bayonet from World War II. So it's just super cool. I love history and military stuff like that. It's actually a German bayonet. So don't ask me how he got it, because I don't know. So if something needs to be overdubbed, or it's different than what we've tracked live, then a lot of times I overdub everything here in my own studio. And for that, the signal chain is mostly amps, so I'll ISO amps in a different room and run them through my preamps. So if we go over to rack, I'm mainly running most of my stuff through these API 512Cs. So those are my main preamps. I also have a couple other options for preamps. This is a Wardbeck M470 preamps that are racked from an old Wardbeck console. And Wardbeck was like the Canadian Neve, so to speak. So they have a very Neve vibe. And this is a MPA Gold 2 preamp. Not super high end. I've had that. I actually got that from a guy when I was in high school. I interned at a studio and he was selling it. So I've had that a long time. But most of my signal chain is amps mic'd up, running through the APIs, and then into the Symphony for conversion into Pro Tools. For Bethel stuff, it's mostly the Shure 545s. So they're similar to a 57, but they have a little smoother top end. It's just slightly EQ'd a little different. So to my ears, it sounds a little more vintagey, if you will. Yeah, but Bethel stuff is pretty much 545 straight on the amp into that signal chain. These are the Universal Audio Auxes, and basically what they are is attenuation. So you can run, you run it in between your amp and your speaker cab, so you can crank your amp up full volume if you want to get the power amp saturation from it, and you can attenuate the volume and send it out to your speakers. So you can run an amp cranked, but the volume attenuated down so you're not blowing up the house. So it's cool. But the way I mainly use them is you can also use it as a direct solution. So a lot of times if I'm tracking and I can't be loud, it's late at night, and I just have a lot to work on, I'll run through the Auxes, so like some of my amps through the Auxes, and then you can actually run it direct into Pro Tools. And these have some cab modeling built in, so you can actually simulate the speaker cab all with their software. So it's kind of cool, and it's a really good hybrid solution. It's probably my favorite hybrid solution when you can't just run a full amp cranked. So yeah, so that's what I use those for. I don't always use them. I haven't used them on Bethel stuff, but a lot of other projects when I'm working and it's late or something, I'll use those and they sound good. I have, there's two compressors here, DVX 160s. I don't track through these a lot, but sometimes if I'm mixing something or if I'm producing it somewhat, or I have, control of that sound, then I might run something through it. But if I'm tracking for a different producer or album, I usually don't compress my guitars, so that way they can mix it how they want and have the option. So I have two of these. Then two effects I have. This is a full tone Trek, which is a clone of a lot of the rack courses in the 80s that a lot of guys like Dan Huff and those guys used. It's a tri-chorus, so it's like the sound of the 80s basically on guitar. It's just like massive, wide, 3D sounding chorus. It sounds amazing. So I throw that on some stuff. I think I used it on Anything Is Possible on the last record. but I also have a Mobius patch to kind of emulate that when I don't have that live. So this is a old Digitech Harmony machine. Basically is a harmonizer. I picked this up for like 50 bucks local. It's just like fun when I'm just jamming. I haven't used it on a record yet, but basically you can set the key and like change your presets and do all sorts of fun stuff. And then this is just a headphone amp if I'm tracking with people here and need to send some headphone mixes. So that's pretty much it for the rack. So these are the 2 power amps for my studio monitors because they're passive. So the bottom one is an Adcom 555, and that is for the Pro Axe. I believe it's a 200 watt amp, and then I have a I think it's the 545. Yeah, I get it confused because the mic is the 545. Yeah, 545 for the NS10s. Yeah, so I don't really use this a lot. It's just kind of here. To look cool. You gotta have stuff in your studio that makes you look cooler than you are. It's like, if I need this. Bunch of different slides, if I'm needing to slide on a track or something and looking for different tones. So that's fun and loud. Nebo, you remember these? Yeah, that's fun. I tried to use it on the new record and bring it back, but I don't think it made it on anything. Capos, AirPods, good for mixing. And then hard drives. So down here we have my main pedal board that I use, and it's a pretty involved setup. So if you want to know more about this, I have a video in my channel that will be linked in this video that you should check out, and you can hear what I have going on there. Next to that is the Helix, which has been fun getting to know, and basically building all my sounds from this and amps into that thing. So that's been fun. There was a lot of Bethel inspired patches out there from great guys, and I was just like, I wonder what it would sound like if I just sat down with my gear in here and tried to get it as close as possible, in this environment in my studio, and yeah, just wanted to see what the Helix was actually capable of. So I spent a few months doing it actually off and on, working on building my delays and reverbs and drives and amps and every aspect of this and that as much as I could into that as kind of an all-in-one unit. So yeah, I spent too much time on it. So this is the amp wall, and as you see, I need a bigger wall because it's ever increasing, and decreasing the amps is not an option unless my wife says it is. So yeah, we'll start with the Marshalls. This is a 1976 Super Lead. This is a 1972 50 watt, and that is modded with a Brown Sound mod, which is basically Van Halen 1 and 2, those albums, like his tone on those, and it nails it. It sounds freaking killer. I don't use these on Bethel records. Maybe one day I'll get to, but we got a matchless DC30 here, which is a great sounding amp. This is just a 212 cab, which I swap speakers in and out as I'm playing or recording or creating impulse responses. So right now it's loaded with my 1966 silver Almaco and then a blue Almaco. Here's a Fender Prosonic, and this is an amp we use a whole lot with Bethel, and it pairs super well with an AC30, so that is one of the reasons. It's not your typical blackface Fender sound, which is pretty scooped and breaks up a little bright. It's much more smooth in the mid-range, and a lot of that is to the speaker and just the way that amp was designed. So it's not a blackface Fender like you'd think from looking at it. It's a cool amp. And then this is a 90s Twin Reverb, which is loud and clean and sounds awesome. So these are some of my favorite amps right here. They are both UK-made Korg era AC30s from the 90s. This one has Mercury transformers and a choke in it, and this one is all stock. Both of them sound awesome, and they're loaded with greenbacks that are UK made as well. If you don't know, Vox transitioned all of their production to China in 2004, and AC30s do not sound the same as the UK made ones. It's funny, I never was a fan of AC30s. you know, when I was growing up in high school or whatever, I would go in a Guitar Center and spend hours, you know, playing guitar a lot like any kid there. And I was never a fan of the AC30s, but that was because I never played a real one, so to speak, that was made in the UK. And not to be too much of a snob with that, but just believe me once you tried it. You gotta take a listen to them. So these are staple amps for me. Anything I do with Bethel, I'm using these amps, and it's either paired with a ProSonic or the DC30, sometimes a Twin, but always usually at least one AC30. And then over here is this corner that is getting really small with these amps. So this is a JCM 900 stereo cab and a Marshall JCM 2000, kind of a modern Marshall amp. This cab I use a lot when I want a 412 and trying out different speakers, so it's stereo, so I can load 2 different sets of speakers on either side to run with a different amp if I want a closed back sound. Above it are these PV Classic 50s, and these amps are kind of a sleeper amp. They aren't incredible, flawless sounding, but they're some of the best tube amps you can get for the money. I got these, I think, for a couple $100 each. And yeah, they kind of rule. When people ask me like, what's a really cheap tube amp to get, I say try to find a used Classic Series PV, because you can find them for $300, $400. It doesn't take a lot of money to get, you know, a tube amp that feels and sounds decent. So yeah, those are fun, like utility amps. They have cool cleans. They kind of remind me of more of the Hot Rod Fender series, is kind of what they are close to. Moving on to these cabs, this is a 73 Marshall 412 loaded with a quad of 1971 greenbacks with pulsonic cones. I won't get too nerdy there, but that is kind of the holy grail of greenback speakers right there. And then this lower one it's a 1976 cab that matches my head, and it is loaded with blackbacks, which are like greenbacks of that era. They changed them and put a black cap on the speaker, and they're a little more aggressive and forward sounding. So both really cool cabs. All right, let's take a look at the guitars. So starting with the acoustics, this is a 1966 LG 12 string Gibson, and super vibey guitar, very fun. The next one is a 66 LG O, just kind of a small body acoustic. And then one of my favorites is this 1966 J45, beautiful dreadnought acoustic. Surprisingly, I found all these guitars local here in Reading. The J45 and the LG O, I went to a farm, and they were some lady's grandparents, and she didn't play. And she wanted them to go to someone who played, and I play. So got them for a good deal, and yeah, they're great guitars. This is a Martin Owen 21, great sounding mid-forward acoustic. Track's awesome, so just look into these if you're a worship leader. A lot of our Bethel people use this, Josh Baldwin, Paul, great guitar. Moving on, trying not to nick these, Gretsch White Falcon. This is their newer Players Edition model, so it has cool features like a pin bridge and some other stuff. I did a little overview of this on their channel that you can look at for more details about that guitar. And then I just got this in this week. This is a 1989 Lawsuit Les Paul copy, and it's a Bernie is what it's called, but it is a spec for spec Les Paul custom. So all mahogany, it feels just like a Les Paul for a fraction of the price. So I'm excited to use that more, it's fun. Gibson Sg, not vintage, but still cool. This has been my #1 for the past probably 2 years. And it's a Veritas Portlander custom model. And it's loaded with Lawler El Reyes right now, which if you're a guitar player, these are basically the same pickups as the Lambertone Cremas and the Veritas Bearcats. So they're all kind of the same. But this is an awesome guitar, and I've used it a whole lot the past couple years. So moving on, we have the Scratch Duo Jet. I've done a couple of mods to this, replaced the bridge with a roller bridge and pinned it. It's stock other than that, has TV Jones pickups in it. This guitar actually took a fall when we were on a UK tour and the headstock broke, which was a sad day. It was a stagehand that knocked it over, so I wasn't too bummed because David Paleo, our guitar tech, is awesome and he fixed it all up. Look at that repair. It's like brand new. So still works great. Awesome, fun guitar. Next is my Strat. This is one of my favorite guitars. I love Strats, and this is an 06 or 08 Eric Johnson custom. And I'm a massive fan of Eric Johnson and his playing and his tone and his guitar. Mainly got this guitar because of a lot of the specs, not so much because I love Eric, though I would get it because of that, but it has a 12-inch radius, which is super flat, which a lot of Strats don't have, and that's similar to a lot of my Veritas as far as the feel goes. Moving on is my first custom Veritas I got, which is another Portlander in this beautiful sparkle color, and it's loaded with 3 Lawler gold foil pickups, which sound very cool. It's one of my favorite guitars. They're all my favorites if you haven't noticed. Danelectro baritone. This is a super fun guitar to play when you want something a little different for rhythm. They're really cheap too. This was like 400 bucks and sounds awesome. So if you want to change up your rhythm playing, check these out. And then on from there, a couple of odds and ends, mostly used in the studio when I need it. Here's another Proline Portlander. This is a vintage Japanese no-name guitar. I literally don't know what it is, just walked into a Guitar Center on a day off on tour, and it's just super vibey sounding. So I use it sometimes. The Bigsby is super cool sounding. This is a Fender Acoustasonic, which I don't use a whole lot, but they sent one to us to check out, and it's honestly crafted very, very beautifully. But I don't really do a whole lot of like hybrid acoustic electric playing. But it's here and it kind of matches the studio, so that's pretty, right? Here's a fun one, Charvel with Floyd Rose. Gotta have this in your arsenal for the dive bombs and 80s game. Super fun guitar. And this guitar, you were asking me in my other video what one of my first guitars was, and this is one of them. This was a parts caster I picked up in a Guitar Center for like 150 bucks, and it's an SX is what it's called. Basically just a cheap import guitar. These are like 150 bucks new, and they're not perfect, but they are super cheap for modding. So this one, spent a lot of time like refinishing it, new pickups, and it sounds really cool. It does have a Floyd Rose, which is a pain to set up if you're not used to that sort of thing, but it will never go out of tune, which is pretty sick. So yeah, still have it. It's cool guitar. And then moving on, just some other odds and ends. Here's another parts caster, a little Banjitar, which I really don't use for anything, and then a bass. So that's pretty much it. So all the sound treatment in the room is Owens Corning 703, if I recall, fiberglass, which is super effective treatment. And this is Guilford of Maine fabric, which is fire retardant. And then I just built wood frames around it and stained it to kind of match the vibe of the studio and the rest of our house to make the wife happy. So I have these 2-inch panels all on the sidewalls, and as this cloud above my mix position. And then in the front, I have 4-inch panels to kind of help with the low end. And yeah, it's been really effective for treating this small little room.
Dope.
Whew.
Anything else? Did we miss anything?
Not,
no, I don't think so.
Yeah, not really. Talk to my cats.
Yeah.
No.
Now we just gotta get a bunch of, well, we can get filler footage of cats roaming around, but
No.
cat video, just get B-roll
Yeah.
of everything, and maybe of you just hanging out, maybe just
Yeah.
pretend like you're tracking some stuff or recording something real quick.
Mhm.
Then we can call it a day after that.
Yeah.
Sweet. I'll cut this. You can cut the audio.